Hey guys, I think we can get started. I'm just waiting for a few more folks to join. In the meantime, like if you have any questions, please start pouring in your questions in the comments below. Uh, and I'll just give another couple of minutes to everyone, uh, so that like they can type in their questions, and we can we I'm going to recap tomorrow's in fact yesterday's topics as well very quickly. Then we'll also talk about nature conservation and wildlife protection, and why it is important. And later on, after taking your questions, depending on how many questions are there, we will also discuss which camera body is right for you. Although the camera body depends on like what kind of photography you do. But today's session, like as I am I shoot primarily wildlife and action. That's the reason why I would like to recommend few of the camera bodies like which are meant for this kind of photography. Like if you have any questions around any other kind of photography like which you are into, if you want to ask questions, please send in your questions in the comments section below, and I will try and answer those questions as soon as possible. Okay. uh, Let me quickly see like how many people we have. You can see hey guys, feel free to type in your questions. Let me first ask you, like, how many of you uh, attended yesterday's session, or you got a chance to look at the video on my Instagram story yesterday? Because accordingly I'll have to structure today's session. So please type in your comments so that I get to know that how many of you have actually attended yesterday's session. I think we have seen some comments with Tahir, Vishal, Akshay. Okay, so it seems like very few people actually looked at the video yesterday. I have Rohit ji actually attended yesterday's session, so I will let me quickly do one thing. Let me very quickly recap what we covered yesterday, right? And then we can take it forward from there. In case you guys want me to switch between Hindi and English, please let me know. Please pour in your questions. I will go accordingly. But let me first continue with English, and then I'll on need basis, like I can switch. Hi Tahir. Okay, so yesterday what we covered was like three most important things from photography point of view, which are technical in nature. And then we also talked about three technical things which are most critical, right? So the first three things which are non-technical, which are related to you or a photographer as such, let me first talk about those three things first. I think the first thing what we talked about was light. It is not something which is related to your camera, which it is an external factor, but light plays the most important thing in photography. It is all about light, how much light is falling. It is all about how to control light, because that makes your photographs look stand apart. That makes your photographs look good. The second thing which we talked about yesterday was the vision, or the eye of the eye of a photographer, like how you visualize things. How how you are portraying, or how you are going to portray that subject in your picture is something which makes you a great photographer. So it is all up to your eye and how you visualize things, right? So that was the second most important thing which I talked about, right? And I think that is something like which I talked about at length yesterday. I'm not going to go into the details. Like, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. And the third thing which I talked about, again from non-technical perspective, or non-technical aspect of photography, like which is very, very critical, is your passion. If you do not have passion, trust me, no matter how much money you put in, or how much, or what technical, or what trainings you attend, what camera body you have, what lens you have, if you are not passionate, if you don't have that passion within you, I don't think like you can become a great photographer. I think passion is something like which turns you into a great photographer from a normal photographer. So that is, I think these are the three things which I talked about yesterday, which are very, very critical, and these are non-technical. So let me repeat. Number one, light. Number two, your eye, or how you visualize things. And number three is your passion, right? So we covered this in detail yesterday. Now let me talk about the three most important things from technical perspective. These three things are most critical because photography is all about controlling light, right? As I mentioned, as a non-technical aspect, like light is the most important thing for photography. If you know how to control light, how to increase or how to decrease the light falling on the sensor, or on the light falling on the object, that makes your photographs look great. That makes a huge difference. And for controlling light, there are three things in photography. We call these, a combination of these three things, we call it as a exposure triangle. So in order to have a perfect exposure triangle, like you need to control your aperture, your shutter speed, and the ISO. These are the three things like which you need to talk about, or which you need to control in order to master the exposure. By controlling these three things, like you can master like what exposure you need for your subject or for your photograph, right? So these are the three things which I wanted to talk about, or which I wanted to touch upon. But these are the things like which makes your photographs look great. Let me quickly see some comments. I can see some comments pouring in. What aspect, let me read that for you. Apart from eyes, still what aspect one has to keep in mind while clicking? Small tips for non-professional perhaps. See, as I mentioned, it's not only eye, but it's more about like how you visualize things, and visualization is something like which comes to you with experience. Visualization also comes to you how good you are in the stream in which you are clicking these pictures. Let me give you an example. Let's say if you are if you're a sports photographer, if you're clicking let's say sports, let's say you're covering a cricket match, right? Now with experience, you know how a bowler is going to bowl, or with the initial reaction of a batsman, like on what side the batsman is going to play that shot. So accordingly, like you will change your framing, you will change your composition of your picture. So along with that, I'm saying, like eye is the most important thing in the, how you're visualizing things. But definitely your experience does come into picture, and the more you click, the more you know your subject, the more knowledge you have about your subject, it will make a huge difference in the kind of pictures you are taking, right? And then at a later stage, like there are other things which are it that could be your camera body, that could be your lenses, definitely. But initially, like these are the three things which I talked about: your light, your visualization or your eye, and then the last thing what I mentioned, which was a non-technical aspect again, was your passion. So these are the three most critical things which are non-technical, but these make a huge difference, right? Okay, let me see if there are any more comments or any questions which are coming. Okay. Hi guys, seeing some. Okay, so now let me switch gears and let me start with the agenda or the topics which I wanted to cover today. I wanted to talk about nature conservation and wildlife protection, right? And I know some of you may have clicked some bird pictures, some of you may have clicked some mammals in the past, but it's not about, I'm not going to talk about only wildlife photography. The mission or what we are trying to achieve, or the objective of Pick My Nature is to promote wildlife conservation, or to promote nature conservation and wildlife protection. Photography is just one medium through which we are promoting, because we want people to start loving nature. They should start caring about nature. They should start connecting themselves with nature, because till the time all these three things happen, people will not protect mother nature, people will not protect wildlife, people will not think about saving nature and why it is important. Now, if I talk about nature conservation and wildlife protection, I think it's high time, and during these COVID times also, you can see like how quickly, like because of the lockdown, how quickly nature is trying to recover itself. But let me tell you, like, why it is important, and what is the root cause behind this. I think human species is something, I would say, we are very mean. We are very mean, and we are very selfish, right? And wherever we go, let me give you some examples, like why I'm saying this. Like, I know, like, these are very strong words to use about the mankind, but I'm not saying like everyone is bad, but in general, we as human beings, like, we are very selfish. We do not care about others, and that is what the problem is. That is what is causing imbalance within our ecosystem. And let me give you some examples. I think we are the first ones to create pollution wherever we whatever type it may be. It could be air pollution, it could be polluting our rivers, polluting our environment, our our natural resources. uh, it could be as simple as that, noise pollution. Now you guys may have realized this, over a period of last 1 month or so. uh, why nature is trying to recover itself is because nature is also getting a breather, right? There are so many other species or other things which are part of our ecosystem, which human beings, they never cared about all those things. And that is the reason why I'm saying, like, why it is so important for us to think about, and we have to start thinking about all these things. It's high time, right? So as I mentioned, like, this is the first cause. Like, human beings, like, we are selfish, and we are the ones who are creating or who are causing that pollution. Like, we need to think about, we need to stop thinking, we need to start thinking about other species as well. So that is very, very important for us, and we have to stop creating this pollution. I think second thing which I wanted to talk about was why there is an imbalance. Right? If we think about, like, why there is an imbalance in our ecosystem today, uh, there is a there is an imbalance because, again, because of human species, right? We are the ones who are trying to encroach. Like, we are the ones, we want everything. Like, we want, if you think about, like, 40 years back, 30 years back, 20 years back, the kind of forest land we had was much more as compared to what we have today. So human species, like, we, because of the increase in population, because of because of our own greed, like, we have been trying to encroach that piece of land which never belonged to human beings, right? And that is the reason why you hear about conflict between, let's say, the human beings and the wild, like big cats like tigers and other animals, right? It's because of that. If you, as one of the species in the ecosystem, will not try, or will try to encroach the land or the other resources which belong to other species, obviously there is going to be a conflict, right? So that is another, like, we are causing that, we are trying to encroach, and that is impacting the imbalance in our ecosystem. And that is the reason why we have to think about protecting our wildlife and our nature. So the third thing is, as I mentioned earlier, like, we are killing animals, we are polluting, we are encroaching, but how do we, what else we are doing, right? If you think about, like, what else or how we are creating that imbalance is, the structures, like, which we are building. These are not very eco-friendly structures. Like, we are creating, we are let's say, if we have concrete, that again, within jungles, like, we are creating certain structures, like, which are built of concrete, which are not built of wood or other things. Like, that itself is a pollution. Like, that itself is causing a lot of imbalance within the jungle or within the ecosystem, and that causes a lot of unrest between among other species which are part of our ecosystem. So that is the reason, like, these are the three things, I think, which are causing a lot of issues within our ecosystem. And that is the reason why I was saying, we need to start thinking about protecting our other species, and we need to start thinking about protecting nature and wildlife within which are part of our ecosystem. And if we'll not if we will not protect these things, obviously over a period of time, and that time is not like we don't have that much of time with us. Like we have to start acting now, because if we will not act now, we don't have much time left with us, and our kids will never, or they will not be able to see all those things like what we have witnessed in the past or during our childhood, right? So it's very, very important for us that we protect wildlife and nature. Okay, now let's think about like how we have to do that, or how we can act as human beings, like as human species. Like how can we act responsibly, right? What is the responsibility like we have to play towards protecting our mother nature? I think the most important thing is like we have to start involving our younger generation into this, and that's what the whole objective of these sessions is. That's the whole objective, like why we want we want to conduct various workshops. We want to conduct various workshops within schools and colleges, and within societies, so that like we can involve youngsters into this. We can involve these kids, because if we are able to involve them, if we are able to explain them how important it is for us to to protect mother nature, it will help us in the long run. It will help us in conserving our forests. It will help us in protecting our wildlife. Now, and that is the reason why I'm saying like we have to involve kids at the right age. Now, it's a subject, it's a topic, like it's not a money minting business, and that is the reason like why a lot of our parents, they do not involve their kids into nature conservation or wildlife protection. But I think that's the that's the mindset shift we need from parents. We want to involve parents, and so in order to involve kids, in order to involve our younger population, it is very, very important for us that we involve the parents. We involve parents along with kids, because then only this thing is going to work. Otherwise things will not work, and people will not or kids will not get involved into this activity, and they will not start loving nature, and will lose the cause. So having said that, how do we do that? I think the first thing what we have to do is like, you will only love nature, or you will start loving nature when you have some memories created, when you have some association with nature or with wildlife. Then only it will stay with you, then only it will stick with you, then only your kids will start loving it. If you don't have those memories, if you don't have if you're not able to relate yourself with nature, obviously like you will not be in a position, or you will not maybe in the short term, you might you might go and visit some national parks, and some of these nature conservation activities you may get yourself be part of. But in the long run, like you will not you'll not stick to nature conservation activities or wildlife protection activities. So that is the reason why we have to kind of relate. We have to create those memories, and that's very, very important for us, right? Now, how do we do that? How do we create those memories is something I was thinking about, like how do we involve kids, or how do we create those memories with with family? How do we involve maybe we can create some pictures. Let me know your thoughts as well, like how do you think we can how we can create memories, or how we can create those family pictures, or how can we create let's be innovative about that. Just pour in your comments. I would like to hear your thoughts. How do you think we can create memories with nature or with wildlife? I'm just taking a pause. I'm just going through some of the comments. In the meantime, like, you can start submitting some of your comments below, your ideas, that how we can how can we create memories, or how can we involve ourselves into nature conservation and wildlife protection. Just feel free to add your comments below. I can see a few people have joined now, so okay, I have few people. So guys, like, I won't be able to repeat everything like what I covered so far in the first 30 minutes or so, but what I would what I would recommend is you can send me your questions, send me your ideas, and I will try to answer those questions one by one, if possible today. If not, then as soon as I'll get time, I will send in my responses to you. Or at least there's nothing right or wrong, or there's no correct answer as such, but I would like to just make sure that I send in my based on my experience, like what I know. At least I will try and share all those things with you, right? Okay, I can see like few more people have joined. I can see Muhammad has joined. Divya, hi Divya, hi Isha. See, random variable. Okay. You can see Manan. Okay, great guys. So I think let's okay, I have a question, how I can take a good picture. Okay, now that's one of the very, very basic questions. How can I take a good picture? Now see, it's not funny, but this is the most basic and most important question, which normally, like, when we are in the field, like, we get this question quite often. How to take a good picture. Now, for first thing, what I would like to mention here is one is taking good pictures. So you have to come out of that mindset of taking picture. What I feel as a photographer, I think that's the difference between a photographer and a normal person who is clicking pictures, right? We don't have to take a picture, we create pictures, right? A photographer is always trying to create a picture. He is visualizing, like, the three things. Remember those three things what I mentioned at the beginning. Number one, light. Number two, how you visualize your subject, and how you are trying to visualize that how you want to compose that picture. And the third thing is like that passion which I was talking about. See, if you have a combination of these three things, no matter like what kind of camera body you're using, no matter what kind of lens you're using, you can create amazing pictures. Like, you can create very good pictures, but the technical piece comes in later. Forget about the technical aspect of things, what camera, what lens, and all those things. You can click very, very, very good pictures with your camera, or with your with your camera phone, right? But it all depends on these three things which I talked about. How much, like, how you're visualizing your subject, how you are going to frame. Framing plays a very important role. What you want to show in the subject, what you want to cover in that picture, what is the subject, how you want that light to fall on the subject, how much light you want. Sometimes, like, an underexposed picture can give you more results or more comprehensive results as compared to a overexposed or a perfectly exposed picture, right? So it all depends on what's there in your mind, like how you are visualizing things, how you are going to compose that picture, and then how are you going to create that picture. So keep that in mind, as a photographer or as a person like who wants to take good pictures. Like, you always have to create a picture, and the picture composition involves a lot of things. Picture composition includes framing, the positioning of the subject, how much light you want on that subject, and whether you want a blur effect, how much depth of field you need, so there are a lot of those things, but it all depends on what's there in your mind. I will cover Mohammed, I'll cover your question about taking good pictures from a different angle or from a different perspective, like when it comes to the technicalities of the camera and all those things. Maybe in the next session I will try to include that as as one of the topics. But today, I wanted to spend some more time on the nature and I wanted to connect photography with nature conservation and wildlife protection. So but thank you for your question, and I think we have I can see, you've mentioned you have a D50 Canon and 18-200 mm. See, as I mentioned, all these things comes in later. First you need to understand yourself, first you need to understand your mind, that what thrives you, what you want to click, whether you want to click everything or whether you want to click a particular type of photographs. It could be as simple as that you want to shoot wildlife. It could be, and I'm not saying nature is all about wildlife. You can take landscapes, you can create a lot of those things, you can do street photography. But first of all, you need to decide that what specialization you want to get into, because the moment you start realizing that, okay, this is what you like. Let's say you like for example, in my case, I shoot action. I have passion for cricket, and I shoot cricket and I shoot wildlife. These are the two things which I don't click anything else, although I can talk about other things as well, but this is what my personal preference is. Similarly, you also need to decide what you like. The moment you start understanding your likes and dislikes, I think you will start making a huge difference in your photography and the images which you're creating, right? So try to do that. Okay, try to understand what you like. Okay, let me just simply go back to what I was talking about earlier. So as I mentioned, we have to create memories, and we have to involve kids. We have to involve, and in order to involve kids, it is very, very important that we involve their parents as well. And the parents will only get involved when they see those memories. People will only be able to relate to nature. They will only work towards nature conservation if they have started creating some memories with nature, and because that's what is going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. So that is where the photography comes into picture. You have to, if you have to start loving nature, and you have to start start protecting wildlife, you have to start loving nature, and you have to start loving wildlife. And how to do that? Create those images. I would recommend, take your kids out. I'm not saying go crazy with that, but I would definitely recommend that involve your kids in activities. If you have young kids, if you have very, very small kids, do take them to zoos, to zoo or any close by wildlife or nature conservation parks which you have in the close vicinity. If not, you can take them to you can take them to parks. There are so many birds which are in and around our societies, you must involve them, you must take them to these parks in early in the morning, and the kind of connect they will start building with these birds is immense. Maybe it will take some time for the parents to build that connect, but kids is something like if you're involving our kids at the right time, I'm sure like they will start building that connect very very quickly with birds and with animals. Very interestingly, I wanted to call out this thing, like majority of the times I think parents are the one who are trying to enforce things, or they're trying to enforce like what's there in their mind. And let me give you an example. I was watching a video yesterday, very interesting. They said like there's a photographer like who is only shooting, let's say, frogs, right? He goes into the jungle, he's clicking those pictures of different species of frogs, and sometimes like his followers have been asking him that why are you only shooting frogs, and it's sometimes like there's no return on investment, like you go into jungle just to click frogs and all. Now, and very interestingly, like he talked about this, and it's not something like which came to my mind. He said like parents are the ones like who are restricting. Parents are the one who are restricting their kids. Parents are the one who are trying to paint a picture. Let the kids, or let a child develop his or her likes. Now he gave an example where he said, when we were kids, we always wanted to run after dogs, or we wanted to run after insects or frogs, and maybe like if there is a snake, like if a child doesn't know, he doesn't know like it hurts, or he might bite. So as a kid is always running after all these things. It's the parents, right? It's the parents like who is trying to put it in their minds that it might hurt you or it might bite you, so stay away, right? And that's what is happening, right? That's the reason why sometimes like kids they develop that thing in their mind, that every wildlife is something like which is there to hurt human beings, which is not the case, right? Wildlife is something like, if you do not destroy their or if you don't encroach, if humans are not encroaching their land, if humans are not disturbing them, I don't think like wildlife is something like which is going to hurt anybody. Like as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, it is very important for us to maintain that lovely balance within the ecosystem. And if we have the right ecosystem, if we have the right balance, I think everything can thrive. But we just have to stay, humans or human species, like we have to stay within our limits. We have to understand what is important, and it's not only the human beings like which are important for this. So there are a lot of other things as well. Okay, let me take a pause here, and then any questions on nature or wildlife or anything else, I'll just take a pause here. I'll wait for some of your questions. Anything related to the topics which I covered yesterday, anything which you want to understand, anything which you want me to repeat. I'll just take a quick pause, maybe for 30 seconds, and if I'll wait for your questions. Like if you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the comment section, and I'll try to answer that. So I like nature photographs also. Example, if I take a photo of any animal, so how can I take against? Okay, so I have a question in the comment section about, like, if I'm taking a photo of any animal, so how can I take it against the flight. Okay, maybe if I'm understanding this question correctly, I think the question is like how to take a picture of a flying bird. I think it's so. Mohammed, like this is something which is related to the technical aspect of your cameras, but let me try to answer that quickly. When you shoot birds in flight, there's a we have a option, continuous focus. Like, I don't want to get into too many technicalities here, but I just want to very quickly answer that. If you are taking a picture of a let's say a fast moving object, there is an option, like there are different types of autofocus in your camera, like whether you're using Canon or whether you're using Nikon or Fuji, whatever. There is an option, a continuous focus option or continuous autofocus option, which is there. So what happens is you have to follow the subject, and the moment you start following the subject, like right at the start, when you start following the subject, you have to lock the autofocus, and don't leave it. Don't let that don't lose that focus. Don't unlock that focus till the time you've clicked that picture. Now what happens is typically when you're clicking a picture, you just simply let me show it to you. So you just click it like this, right? So you just press this and click. Now we as wildlife photographers, like what we normally do is, we have this, can you see this auto exposure lock, AE? We do autofocusing with this, and we use a thumb, right? So we lock this. Like the moment we have locked, we don't leave it, we don't lift the thumb, and then when the subject is in perfect focus, that's when we shoot. That's when we kind of release the shutter, right? That's what you have to do. I hope that answers your question. I know like it is difficult to understand that with on a video chat, but definitely you can send me the questions and I will try to answer that, or maybe you can join one of our workshops here in Noida, and I can certainly help you out with that. You have to be out in the field to learn all these techniques, because even if you will learn, it will take some time for you to master these techniques. And there are photography is a vast subject. Like there are so many things which you should which you need to learn, and then also you need to practice. Like without practicing, you won't be able to do, or you won't be able to take great pictures. Sometimes like people have seen a lot of youngsters putting some great pictures, but it has to be consistent, right? It is very, very important that we are consistent with our images. We are consistently taking good pictures. Otherwise what will happen is sometimes like by fluke also we can take good pictures, but you have to be consistently delivering that on an ongoing basis. I think that's what makes you stand out of the crowd. I think I talked about the nature conservation a little. One thing which I wanted to also talk about was nature. We have started an initiative called Natural Neighborhood. What Natural Neighborhood is all about. So Pick My Nature is as I mentioned yesterday, Pick My Nature is a community of all the photographers or the wildlife enthusiasts, like who want to be come along with us and promote nature and wildlife conservation. So it's more of a community, right? But we have started a project called Natural Neighborhood. This is specifically Natural Neighborhood. The concept is, we want to we are so busy with our corporate lives, we are so busy in our urban lives that we don't have time for nature, right? So we wanted to involve more and more people to come out and spend, just some, maybe in a week they can spend half an hour, 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, just in and around their societies, in helping, in educating people to conserve natural or nature in and around their societies. So basically, natural neighborhood is all about promoting nature conservation, and help protect nature within the urban areas, along, let's say, in and around our societies, or it could be the nearby areas or nearby villages where we can go and talk to some of the villagers and help them understand why it is important for us to protect nature. Okay, with that, let me simply, I think I have answered most of the questions which have come through so far. If there are any more questions, please feel free to just put in your questions in the comment box below. I'm just moving to the next topic which I wanted to cover. The next topic, as I discussed about nature and wildlife, and I connected these two topics like photography and nature together. Now, if I specifically talk about, there are questions out there that which camera should I use, or what camera I should be using, along with what lens and things like that. So let me first start with if you are a beginner, right? I'm not going to talk about right away about the mirrorless, whether I should go for a mirrorless or a DSLR. But let me start with, like, if you're a beginner, if you already have a DSLR camera, I would recommend just stick to that mirrorless camera till the time you know yourself, like what kind of photography you want to do. Okay, so stick to that camera body. Don't be in a hurry to change the camera body, or don't be excited to go out and buy a new mirrorless or things like that. So just hold on to your emotions for the time being. That's number one. The second thing is, like, if you are a beginner, and if you do not have a camera body, if you want to invest into a camera body, for them I would recommend just simply go ahead and invest into a mirrorless body at this stage, right? Because you do not have a DSLR camera, and that is the reason why I'm recommending you guys to go ahead and start with a mirrorless body, because I think every one of us understand and every one of us know that mirrorless is going to be the future. So gradually, even the photographers, or even people who have invested big time into DSLR or advanced DSLR cameras, like, slowly, gradually, like, we will be moving towards mirrorless. But it's not that easy for us to switch, because we have invested a lot in the DSLR technology. So it will take some time for us to move or to switch to mirrorless. But as I mentioned, if you are new to or if you are new and you do not have a camera body, then you should go for a mirrorless, because that's what mirrorless is going to be the future. Right. Now, second thing is, if you already have a camera body, as I mentioned, just hold on. Like, do not straight away switch. Even if you have a basic camera body, do not switch right away. As I mentioned, do not switch right away. Just wait for some more time. There are certain limitations in the current versions which are out there, and Nikon or Canon, even Fuji, they are coming up with or they are coming up with the firmware upgrades and things like that, and there will be newer versions which will be coming out soon. So just hold on to buying anything new for at least for the next 6 to 8 months, right? Now coming to which lenses and all, right? For the sorry, let me I think I forgot about one more thing which I wanted to cover. Like, if you are a beginner, coming back to the camera bodies, like if you have not if you already have a let's say a basic camera body, do not, like, at this point of time, if you are thinking about switching to or upgrading that to the next what next camera body I should be using, then as I mentioned, like, there are a lot of options available, but it all depends on your budget. I would, if you already have a camera body which is very basic, I would still recommend, if you want to switch or if you want to upgrade to a full frame camera body, go for it. But as I mentioned, like, the technology is changing. If you have to switch, but if you can wait for some more time, let's say another 5 to 6 months time, just wait, right? But if you can't wait, then I think for Nikon DSLRs, like, there are certain good options which are available. In fact, Nikon has recently launched 780, which is a full frame camera body, but they also have a 7500, which is a crop sensor, which is available in the market. It all depends on you, but my personal recommendation would be, if you have a DSLR, make a good use of it till the time you understand what you want to do, what you want to click in the near future, okay? And accordingly go ahead and switch. Okay, now coming to the lenses, now if I talk about, as we are specifically talking about nature and wildlife, if I talk about nature first, let's say if you are into if you want to click landscapes, or if you want to do if you want to if you are a travel photographer, or you want to be a travel photographer, for you guys, you guys simply need a wide angle lens. Now, wide angle, so if I talk about 50 mm, like 50 mm is the we call it nifty 50. Why? Because that's something like, that's the field of view which a typical human being or a typical human being can see with the naked eyes, right? So it's the field of view what we can get from a 50 mm. Anything below 50 mm, you start getting a wide angle view. Now, but what is best for travel photography? It all depends, like, what kind of travel photography you do or what kind of landscapes you click. But starting anything, let's say 20 mm up to 35 mm should give you what you're looking for. Like, if you want to get into astrophotography and all, like, then you need ultra wide angle, maybe 14 mm and things like that. But anything below 14 mm, like that's more fisheye view, which is a completely different subject, so I don't want to touch upon that. But for you guys like who are into landscape photography, I would recommend anything between 20 mm to 35 mm. 35 mm lens is very, very cheap, like very whether it is Nikon or whether it is Canon or any other camera manufacturing companies, they manufacture these lenses. These are easily available, they are not very expensive, so you should invest into that. We have another 5 minutes, so I'm just going to talk about the lenses which are available in the market for wildlife. See, wildlife photography, it's very, 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 very expensive, I would say, because first of all, like, there's no return on investment. Like, nobody in India will pay you unless, like, you're in the top top 5%, right? So that is the reason why I'm saying, like, if you are getting into wildlife photography for passion and things like that, do not over invest. Like, do not over invest in the sense, like, there are some very good lenses which are available. 200 500 mm is something like which is available in the market. It's a very, very good lens. I personally use that along with my my full frame camera body. I think that is something like which is pretty reasonably priced, and that gives you results, right? So 200 500 mm from Nikon is my personal recommendation because I use that. But then similarly, like, there are other lenses which are available, and if you want to go high end, like, there are 500 f4 from Nikon, similarly from Canon as well. Like, there's 500 600 mm f4 lenses, like, which are very expensive, like 5 to 6 lakhs range, which is or even more, right? Sony has similar kind of lenses, like, which goes up to which touches almost 11 to 12 lakhs. So that is the reason why I want to just mention that first you need to understand before you photography it's very, very expensive hobby. So if you want to come out as a photographer, then you need to start picking up a specialized field. Like, you need to do some specialization in one particular field, and you have to master that. And then accordingly, like, you have to slowly start investing into those lenses, those kind of camera bodies, which will give you results for that particular stream. I think that's what my recommendation would be. Okay, I just have 3 more minutes before we get disconnected. Any questions you guys have, please feel free to shoot your questions. Please feel free to